Hello everyone and welcome back to another recap video for It's Okay to Not Be Okay. This one is for episode 5 that is currently up on Netflix. The episode's title is called Rapunzel and the Cursed Castle, and we see why it's titled this towards the end of the episode. I would say this episode is more comical in nature than the others we've seen so far in the series, and we don't get a lot of new insights into the characters, but we do see some interesting things occur as well as some pretty racy conversations at the beginning. So with that weird teaser, let's get into what happened and I'll give my thoughts at the end. The episode begins where we left off in episode 4 with Gang-tae coming to get Moon-young, who's out in the rain after the incident with her father at the hospital. After holding each other for a bit, we see them riding away on the motorcycle in the rain and stopping at a motel to hopefully get a room and dry off for a bit. It gets a little awkward though, since it's a love motel and they both end up not having money on them. And this is when Moon-young takes the opportunity to get back at Gang-tae for what he had said to her at the hospital and messes with him a little bit. She corners him against the vending machine that happens to also sell condoms and asks him what he's feeling in this situation and to share with her the emotions that are coming to mind. And of course he can't respond, and she sort of responds back with, "Well, you said that I'm just a can. Maybe this means that you're just a can too," and kind of throws what he had said about her into his face, since he's not really admitting how she thinks he feels about him and is just overly embarrassed about the whole situation. And she's, really wanting to take the opportunity that's handed to her and get a motel room with him, and he's not having it. Also, he doesn't have any money. Since they can't stay at the motel, Gang-tae decides he doesn't have any choice in the matter, and he ends up taking Moon-young to his place, which also happens to be Ju-ri's family home. But we don't see her until the next day, since she appears to be working the night shift at the psychiatric hospital. Gang-tae tries to hide that Moon-young is there and asks for food from Ju-ri's mother to eat alone upstairs, and later tells Jae-soo that there's a busted pipe in their place and to have Sang-tae stay with Jae-soo, because the truth is Moon-young refuses to leave and she forces him to let her stay the night, using his brother as like a means to an end. Moon-young gives her all to seducing him through the night and, pretends to fall asleep and rolls over onto his side to snuggle him. And all the while, when he rejects her, she just rolls back into her spot, and he ends up getting up and dragging her in the bed as far away from him as possible. He also warns her away from his brother again, and she keeps using this to her advantage, which is how she's able to stay the night.
뭐라고는 안 했어. 일어나 빨리.
입히고 먹였으면 재우는 게 순서지.
신생 안 키워. 놔 빨리.
너 소리 지른다?
나가라고.
오빠! 상태 오빠!
While they're together at Gang-tae's place, he also tells her what he took from the story in her book, Zombie Kid, since when he tries to get her to learn the different emotions on Sang-tae's face emotion cards, she says she isn't autistic, and before she can really explain, he interrupts her, telling her that she isn't like the Zombie Kid either, and tells her how he interpreted the story, which was that the Zombie Kid wasn't just wanting to eat or satiate his hunger or be fed, he was wanting warmth from his mother. As he talks about the Zombie Kid wanting warmth, he's taken her hand and is touching her cheek with the back of his hand, and I think trying to prove a point there. Moon-young says that's not what the story's about, and it's actually just about food and eating, and that the Zombie Kid didn't have any emotions, he's a zombie, and that Gang-tae is just reading into what he wants to in the story because he's soft-hearted. I personally think Gang-tae is right and is understanding Moon-young more than she even knows herself or doesn't want to admit, and we later see Moon-young studying Sang-tae's emotion cards in the morning after Gang-tae said she should, since even if she doesn't want to feel the emotions, she should at least learn what they look like, or she's going to end up living alone her whole life. Since, understanding what other people are feeling is kind of necessary if you want to keep people close to you. That evening is also when Gang-tae admits to Moon-young that since Gang-tae pays such close attention to his facial features to try and understand what Gang-tae is feeling, he forces himself to smile so that his brother doesn't know how much pain he's actually in or what he's really feeling. and that it's not hard to smile if it keeps his brother happy and not upset. And that upset me the most to hear him say that, to be perfectly honest. He also talks about the girl he knew when he was young and how he felt really sorry for how he treated her when he ended up running away from her, and how ever since then he's been running away ever since. That evening is also when he apologizes to his brother for yelling at him when he didn't want to leave Moon-young's side at the hospital, and that he won't lie to him ever again, which obviously he immediately does after this, since he tells his friend that the pipes upstairs burst to keep Sang-tae from knowing and seeing that Moon-young was at their place. That same evening, we see some strange things occur at the hospital, and I can't tell if it is a ghost or the writers are just trying to mess with us, but one of the staff members swears that he hears someone singing on the floor he's watching, and we see a figure walk by him as the lights flicker. Juri confirms with him that one of the patients mentioned hearing the singing as well, and that they believe it's a ghost, and Juri believes her since this patient used to be a shaman and apparently can see ghosts. We also see Moon-young's father being choked by a scary female figure, but when the alarms on his machines go off and his roommates notice, we don't see anyone actually choking him, so it's unsure if he's actually being strangled by a ghost or it's all in his head and it's a side effect of his surgery and mental state. But either way, very strange things are occurring at the hospital right now, and to Moon-young's father. The next morning is when Juri arrives home, and when she gets there and goes to bring milk up to Kang-bae's apartment, finds Moon-young outside smoking a cigarette wearing Kang-tae's clothes. This is when Moon-young finds out that this is Juri's place and that she's the one who suggested to Kang-tae to move in there and also to take the job at the hospital. We see a flash of the two ladies when they're younger, and it appears that something happened between them back then, and it's obviously affecting their relationship now. And when Moon-young baits Juri, telling her how she told Kang-tae that she loved him since she knew he needed to hear that someone loved him, and basically lays claim to Kang-tae, Juri gets upset, telling Moon-young that what she's feeling isn't love but obsession, and Moon-young calls her some bad words, and after that Juri slaps her and they end up fighting outside of Kang-tae's apartment.
호박씨 내숭 가식 착한 척 약한 척 순순한 척 그래서 네가 애들한테 왕따 당한 거야. 어?
못해 천호가 막이 할 만큼 같은 게. 너나 죽어.
야, 너 약 먹었냐?
뭐가 됐지? 야, 이거 너 약 먹었냐? 네가 그래서 안 되는. 야, 너.
Kang-tae intervenes, yelling at Moon-young, telling her to let go of Juri's hair, and this commotion brings everybody, including Kang-tae's brother, up to the roof. After Kang-tae gives Moon-young money and pretty much kicks her out, tells her to leave, we see Kang-tae checking all the faucets and running water, confirming that there's nothing wrong with the pipes and that Kang-tae has once again lied to him. Now, he's not upset about the lie as much as the fact that Moon-young spent the night and was wearing Kang-tae's clothing and not his, and that next time Moon-young needs to wear his clothes, a specific pair of dinosaur clothing. His clothes are more expensive and he just wants Moon-young to have the finer things if she's gonna wear someone else's clothing. So yes, he's upset about the lie, but he ends up being more upset about what Moon-young is wearing and not particularly the lie because, you know, Moon-young was there. With this, Kang-tae says that he'll definitely give her his brother's clothes next time. Meanwhile, Juri's mother is checking in on her daughter who's crying over everything that happened and how Kang-tae only yelled Moon-young's name and how they seemed closer, and also the fact that she was wearing clothes that I guess they had bought together at a BOGO sale. Juri's mother advises that she shouldn't give up on Kang-tae and should just confess, and this is when Juri finds out that yes, her mother knows how she feels for Kang-tae, but not only does her mother know, like everybody in town knows how she feels about Kang-tae. I especially loved how her mother notes how Moon-young has grown up and how beautiful she's become, and Juri's reaction to that. She's so jealous. After all this occurs, we find out that things with Lee Sang-in, who's the CEO of the publishing company, is getting worse and worse. We see he's sleeping at a sauna and is called back to Seoul by his assistant, Yoo Sung-jae, because the book critic that has just woken up from his head trauma caused by Moon-young at her book signing, you know, the guy that fell down the stairs, apparently the pin he had on him and that Moon-young used to almost stab him in the eye was bugged. And so he has the whole incident on videotape and he has audio of what happened. This causes Lee Sang-in to faint for a second, and after looking at all of his staff and thinking about what to do, we later see him and Sang-jae show up at Moon-young's place with suitcases. Sang-in crying because his company is pretty much bankrupt, and Sang-jae because he tricked her into coming with him, not knowing where they were actually going. He pleads with Moon-young to let them stay with her since ultimately everything was her fault, even though she won't admit it. And she tells him that the reason he can't move in now, even though she previously offered, is someone else is going to be living with her. That night, Gang-tae is drinking with his friend at the pizza restaurant, and they have a heart-to-heart, and his friend warns him away from Moon-young, reminding him how she had stabbed him when they first met. Gang-tae thanks him for reminding him and that he needs to do it more often, since apparently Gang-tae has been forgetting his troubles a lot more recently, and even brings up the fact that he'd been forgetting about the butterflies. We also see that Moon-young is still thinking about how Gang-tae gave her money and told her to leave, and she's just very confused by his behavior and takes her frustration out on his shirt that she still has. To her, she thinks he might have a split personality disorder or something, since she's thinking back to the previous night and him holding her hand and placing it to her cheek, and then he's just kicking her out the next day, and she can't figure out exactly why, since to her, Juri started it and she felt like she was being blamed for something that she was just not responsible for, and she was just protecting herself. After Gang-tae comes home from drinking with his friend, Gang-tae curls up behind Sang-tae and asks who Sang-tae likes more, him or Moon-young. Sang-tae doesn't answer since he's asleep, and Gang-tae tells him that he likes Sang-tae more and that all he needs is his brother. We see Sang-tae open his eyes, so it appears that he was actually awake and heard him and was just pretending to be asleep. And we see him process this information, but nothing really else, and he just goes back to sleep. So nothing too big there, just two brothers being really sweet and cuddling up to each other. Oh, my heart. The next day at the OK Psychiatric Hospital, after the morning workout or warm-up, whatever you want to call it, that happens with all the staff and patients. One of the patients who sees Juri watching Gang-tae during this morning routine asks to speak with Gang-tae for a moment after, and starts asking him some personal questions about his age, his family, and relationship status. And after figuring out that him and the nurse aren't actually together and that the nurse just appears to have a crush on him, which might be how Gang-tae sort of is let in on that information, she then offers to set him up with her daughter when she comes to visit her. This patient appears to have a history of self-harm or something else, since when she reaches to see his name on his ID badge, we see a bunch of scars on her wrist. So either she's a cutter or has been attempting suicide a couple times, but Gang-tae gently rejects the offer and says he needs to get back to work. Sang-tae is also at the hospital trying to start on the mural and seems to be having a tough time choosing what color to start with. When the director comes across this, he tries to help by picking up a brush and just slapping some paint on the wall, mentioning that the start is always the hardest, and this obviously upsets Sang-tae, who ends up painting the director's face and chasing him around the hospital with paint buckets, telling him that what he did was wrong and, is trying to pour more paint on him to pay him back for what he did to his wall that he's supposed to be making a mural on. We see the patients interacting with one another during this and just overall seeing their relationship dynamic in the hospital. So for instance, we see the patient who's obviously suffering from depression cry because she kind of wishes that the director would play tag with her, and the patient who's there and suffering from alcohol addiction comforting her and taking her to get more medication, since it seems like whatever she's taking is wearing off, and that seems to be his answer to everything. Whenever she's sad, he comforts her and takes her to get more medicine. After this, Moon-young arrives since the director called her to apologize for what happened with her father the other day, and she implies that he owes her more than an apology since this could be considered a medical accident, i.e., I should sue you. And the director responds by offering to let her strangle him instead. Thinking he's crazy, Moon-young leaves the office but not the hospital, since later on we see her meet up with Sang-tae and ask if he wants to have some fun with her, which he immediately says yes to. Before this happens, we see Juri run into Gang-tae on the roof of the hospital after a patient slaps her while she's speaking to another about the ghost she saw, and she's asking the patient if she had been near a certain room when she heard it. I think the room number she mentions is Moon-young's father's room number. I can't say for sure. I don't remember them showing the room number earlier in the episode, but I think he might be on the second floor, and maybe she's trying to figure out if there is a ghost where it's hanging around. When Juri and Gang-tae are up on the roof, Juri brings up another time she had been slapped and how Gang-tae had comforted her when they previously worked together. Gang-tae, knowing why she's bringing this up and also why she asks if he feels like they are close or not, tells her that she shouldn't waste her feelings on him. Juri, upset by this, still asks him to stay and live with her until they leave, since even though this hurt her, I think she's still gonna keep trying like her mother suggested. While this conversation is going down, it seems that Moon-young had been up there having a cigarette and heard everything, which is why I think she then went to Sang-tae and took him with her to her place. While there, we see she has him sign a written contract to live with her and be her illustrator for her next book, and it looks like she gets him drunk as well. When Gang-tae finds out that Moon-young has taken Sang-tae and calls her to find out where they are, she tells him she's at the haunted castle. When she says this, he says he'll be there soon, which she asks, how do you know where it is? And this is when he finally reveals that it's because he's been there and he remembers her. At the end of the episode, we see another flashback to when Gang-tae and Moon-young are young, and the night after the butterfly incident that caused Gang-tae to run away. We see he's picking flowers on the way to her home that evening, and when she sees he's at the gate from her bedroom balcony, she's happy that he showed up. Like, she's smiling. But after she heads downstairs and sees that her mother is there, that's when we see what he remembers, which is her taking the flowers from him through the gate and throwing them to the ground and telling him to leave. While this is happening, we are hearing a story Moon-young is telling Sang-tae about a little girl whose mother says that she's too special to ever leave the castle and that she has to stay inside and never go out. And the little girl looking up at the moon, hoping for a prince to come save her someday from the haunted castle. So it does appear she was in her own way protecting Gang-tae when they were younger from her mother. We end the episode with Gang-tae at Moon-young's home and having a standoff outside the house. Overall, I really liked this episode, and I feel like I haven't seen a Korean drama like this one. There are so many hints and details in every scene, it's incredible. The writing and characters are well thought out and flushed out, and they had some pretty adult content and conversations at the beginning of this when they were at the Love Motel with the manager. I really love how fearless Moon-young is, and that she just, you know, gets up in Gang-tae's face and messes with him in general. And I love how cat-like she is when she lays down anywhere. And Gang-tae being so shy at the motel is the cutest of moments I've ever seen. It's just, overall, their dynamic is great. Also, this is very surface level to say, but both of those actors in the rain scene, Kim Soo-hyun almost looked like a different person to me with that wet curly hair, and he just looks good wet. They both do. I also now can't see any other actor playing Moon-young but Seo Ye-ji. She is fearless in this role and so freaking sexy whether she's trying to or not, and also very funny. And the outfit they have her in when she's visiting the hospital later in the episode, gosh, she's just gorgeous. I don't normally lust after female leads, but she hits differently for sure. And every mannerism she gives the character is both sexy and scary, and the way that she can manipulate and also show vulnerability. She's bringing so much depth to this character, and I honestly think she might be out acting Kim Soo-hyun, just a little bit. But his character is super complex too, and I like how she is so spot on about him and knows him more than he knows himself. It's like they're both acting as mirrors for one another, but they're also both in denial and aren't willing to really look into themselves and really process what they're feeling for different reasons, and so they keep calling each other out for pretty much the same thing. In the previous episode, when Moon-young calls Gang-tae a hypocrite, I 100% understand what she's talking about now, especially when he talks about how he just stamps down what he's really feeling and slaps a smile on his face so his brother doesn't actually know what he's really feeling. And I think he also does that to everyone else around him, which that's not healthy at all. But yeah, even though Moon-young doesn't seem to understand emotions, he's denying his emotions, which might be worse. So it's like he's trying to be like, look, even if you don't want to feel emotions, you should understand emotions. And she's like, well, maybe you should actually show how you really feel then, if we're talking about emotions here. I'm also so curious about the ghost we keep seeing, who I'm pretty sure is Moon-young's mother. But is it a ghost, or is it Moon-young and her father having flashbacks mixed with hallucinations, and it's all just internal, and the writers are giving us a visual ghost to throw us off that track and make us think that Moon-young's mother is dead and is haunting her father and her. I think she's still alive, but this whole ghost situation is kind of throwing me for a loop. I was not getting science fiction ghosty vibes from the show, but maybe there is a ghost. Like, maybe that's another aspect of the show that is going to be coming out to play, but I really doubt it. I also really enjoyed the comedic moments in this episode and can't wait to see what's next, since Moon-young has taken Sang-tae, and it appears that she's planning to have him live with her at the house, I think, in hopes that this forces Gang-tae to come live with her and move out of Juri's, since we saw that Moon-young considers her a threat and doesn't want her around Gang-tae, since in her mind, Gang-tae is hers and she's not the sharing type. I'm also wanting to see what happens with the CEO of the publishing company and his poor assistant. Maybe he'll end up moving into the house with her, even though she said no to it, but it does appear that Moon-young is planning to write another book and maybe have Sang-tae be the illustrator, since he signed a contract saying that he would. Or that was just her tricking him into moving in with her and getting Gang-tae to live with her as well. Either way, I'm interested to see how that develops. And with that, I'm going to end this video. Until next time, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you're notified when the next recap video is up. And also, if you know anyone that is also obsessed with this show or likes Korean drama and you think would appreciate this, please share this video and let them know about my channel. Let's grow this community and talk more about Korean dramas and television shows in general. Until then, stay safe out there, make good choices, and I'll see you next time. Bye.